I want to welcome everyone who is joining us today, this evening. My name is Pam Bridgeforth. I'm Director of Programs for the Philadelphia Association of CDCs, and we're delighted to have the Register of Wills, Tracey Gordon, join us and give her presentation along with her colleagues from the Office of the Register of Wills. Um, the Philadelphia Association, for those of you who don't know, there are many folks that may be on that are members of ours or that have done work with us in the past or have attended a training. But for those of you who don't know, PACDC, we are a membership association, a nonprofit organization of groups doing all forms of neighborhood revitalization, whether that be affordable housing, youth development, cleaning and greening on commercial corridors, small business support. We have over 150 members, all doing some form of neighborhood revitalization across the city of Philadelphia. And we are delighted to have the Register, Madam Register, join us. Her office contacted us several months ago saying that they were working very, very hard to try to expose as many residents as possible to the resources and opportunities that the office has available and information that they have available. And given the fact that most of our members, in fact, all of our members are really thinking very deeply about how they stabilize their neighborhoods, how they support longtime homeowners, longtime small business folks in their communities, we felt it made perfect sense for us to figure out how we could collaborate together and work together. And we hope that this will be the first of a number of opportunities for us to work with the Registrar's Office to continue to share information, to share ideas, and to identify ways in which we can support Philadelphians maintaining their property, maintaining their vitality in their communities, and seeing Philadelphia grow into the strongest community it can grow into. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Madam Register and say thank you again so much for this wonderful opportunity. And anytime that, again, and I'm very, very serious about this, anytime that you want to do something like this again, you absolutely have our 100% support. You tell us when, and we'll do everything we can to live up to that. Also, if there's specific workshops or trainings that your office is interested in doing, if there's any way that we can collaborate with you on those, we think that would be a tremendous boon for our members as well as the wider circle of people who intersect with them. So thank you again, Madam Register, and we really are excited to hear what you have to share today.
Thank you so much, Pam, or Miss Bridgeforth, for inviting us. Um, I am so happy, that despite um, the epic pandemic that we're going through, which is very serious, that we have figured out a way to communicate with my constituents, the citizens of Philadelphia, virtually. It's safe, it's convenient, and it's informative. And I would like for us to continue this because you know it's hard for people to get out, to get to the buildings, get to meetings, and the good note on a good note of the COVID, and please everybody continue to protect yourself when you're outside. Is it has forced us to use technology and technology in a way that we can just be. I'm like pretty much in your living room because you're actually in my dining room. And I just want to thank you all and anybody on here. We can come to your CDC. We can do these Zooms for your churches and everything. So, good evening. Again, my name is Tracey Gordon. I am your newly elected Registrar of Wills and Clerk of Orphans Court. I was voted into office, just took my oath of office in January, and I haven't preceded someone that had been in the office for 40 years. And I have hit the ground running, and I have so many programs that I am instituting that will assist your CDCs. And I also just want to take the time out to tell you that I am so happy to introduce to you um, my solicitor who have decades of experience in wills, estates, and trusts. Her name is Attorney Sharon Wilson. And I brought her on as my solicitor and as my attorney because, as you know, I am not an attorney, I'm just the administrator. And I wanted to make sure that I partnered with somebody that had the passion and definitely the education to help me message stuff where I'm not necessarily giving legal advice per se, but I'm teaching you all to understand the importance of estate planning. And that's my number one goal. I believe I also have online with us, I don't see her picture up, but I have another attorney that I retained. Her name is Attorney Terry Booker. And so if she's on, I just wanted to make sure I introduce her as well
I'm here,
because
Madam Registrar.
thank you. Because these young women are here to assist me, and we feel that we'll be interested enough that although you're going to get my ideas and you're going to get, my mission, I have attorneys here that can give you the absolute legal application. And so get your pens and papers ready. And also, we do record this, and we do have several social media pages that we rebroadcast on. And so I wanted to start this conversation with a history of this office because I think, and what I've learned in the past through my grassroots upbringing and also through just, going through parochial school and college, how important history is. And I think that when you learn about offices and laws and legislation, I think it's important that you understand the history and the dynamics of why it had to exist and what was the purpose of the existence. So most people think that the Register of Wills is a city office. It's not. Although we work in City Hall, we are a state agency. A lot of people don't know that this is an elected office. That means you have to run for election for this office, or I have to run every 4 years. So if you want to remember, well, so whenever the mayor runs, whenever city council runs, the sheriff, the city commissioner, the register of wills also runs for this office. So you have a choice on who you decide that you want to preside and protect and oversee your generational wealth. And then this past May, you all, some quarter of a million, you all casted that vote for me, and because I explained to you all what I wanted to do in this office to help you save your generational wealth and teach you how to transfer it to your heirs, the heirs of your choice. So, aside being a state agency, we fall under the first judicial district of Pennsylvania. So that means we have to follow the laws that's in that constitution that regulates what we do in the Register of Wills. This office has been in existence since the 1600s. So this office has been here way before the Civil War, way before the Revolutionary War. This office was established by the Quakers during the time, as you know the story, they were fleeing New England because they wanted their religious freedoms. And at the time, landowners were white male. And so this office was established by them so they could protect their wealth, and then they could decide by way of a will how their wealth is transferred. So if this office could withstand a Revolutionary War and a Civil War and be here right now, we have some close to 80 employees. That should tell you right there that you need to know what's going on in this office. And then you should also know what's going on in this office, not when somebody dies. You should know what's going on in this office before someone dies. So you will already be prepared when you come to your office so you can get the assets that your family planned for you to get. What's happening now is we aren't planning for that. We're not planning we're not planning, we're not preparing, and we sure enough is not protecting it if you don't have a will. And for some odd reason, I don't understand why this is not included in our education system. Because just like you understand, the president, executive branch, judicial branch, I think it's very important that you need to understand how to protect stuff that you own, stuff that you cherish, your heirlooms. And I think you should understand how you pass it down so it won't be any confusion amongst your family, nor will it be any confusion with the state. Because whether you make a will or not, the state already has made a will, and that's called intestate. And we're going to go over that shortly. So my whole mission, when I decided to run and I was elected by you all, is I wanted to make sure you understand three things. I wanted you to make sure that you understood what we did. The second thing I wanted to make sure that I could assist you on is if you live in a tangled title, and we will get to that, and that's just living in a house that you think you have a legal interest in, you think it is part of your heir property, whether it's your mother's, your grandmother's, your aunt, but that house is still in the dead person's name. And lastly, I wanted to diversify that office so it could look like Philadelphia. And so far, I've had accomplished all three of those. We're just putting it into practice now. And so let me just tell you some of the things that you might not know that you should know, and you should teach other people what we do at the Registry of Wills. We validate wills. We collect inheritance and estate taxes. By the way, we send every year between 80 to $100 million to the state in Harrisburg in estate and inheritance taxes. I repeat, not every year we send that much money. We're considered a first-class city. Out of the 67 counties, we send the most. Sometimes we go neck and neck with Montgomery County. But as far as the big bucks, as far as the money, I apologize, we send the most. So when people want to say that, oh, Philadelphia ain't worth this, what? No, we're sitting on a lot of wealth, and our properties, as you can see now with the gentrification, are worth a lot of money. And so other things that we do is I assign executive privileges, I issue short certificates, I preserve and protect records and archives. Those records and archives date back to the 1600s. We have records that old, paper records that old. We had just started, we have some digitization of some records, but most of our archives are paper, and we have plans to address that in the future because I want to make sure those records are digitized. So if you want to ever come and look up the history of your family or you need any of those records, we still will have the paper, but we will also have it in a cloud, digitized, so it could be there for your future. We have Ben Franklin will, that's on loan. We have Betsy Ross will, John Rittenhouse. Um, um, we have wills. If it's your grandfather made a will, your grandmother made a will, your great grandmother, you can come down here and you can look up and you can request copies of those records. Most people don't know that besides being the Registry of Wills, I am also the clerk of Orphans Court, which means I preside over marriage licenses and records. We also preserve those. So when you come to get married, I'm the one that signs your marriage certificate. We also set public policy to assist in the protection of your wealth. And I just created a program that I think is going to change the dynamics of home ownership and home generation protection in its history. And it's called the Probate Deferment Initiative. And I'll go over that very shortly. So let's talk about what a will is. Some notes. So a will is simply a document you write during your lifetime that distributes your assets. What are assets? Assets are things that you own. Assets is your home, your house, your businesses. It could be your photographs. It could be uh, any heirloom that you think is worth something that you cherish, that you can make a decision on who gets to own it after you pass on. Assets are not just physical. Assets can be your children as well. Your children that are minors, you want to pretty much establish a will so just in case something happens. Because many times people believe that they should make wills when they die, or not when they die, when they get old. Because I actually thought that. I was like, I can make my will later. Or they may think, hey, I only got one house, one kid, one car, or two kids, whatever you think. I'll die, they automatically get it. Well, that's not how the transfer of wealth, sorry, happens here in Philadelphia. Wealth transfers one or two ways. It transfers the way you want it to transfer, which means when you create the will, or it's going to transfer the way the state of Pennsylvania decides how it's going to transfer. And that's called intestate. You choose what you want, or the state will choose it. And then the last way that the last thing can happen is nothing happens, and then you just sit on property that you think is heir property until you will to do something legal with it, and then they tell you, "Are you the owner?" And you say, "Yeah," and they say, "Prove it," and you can't prove it. Why? Because the deed is still in the dead person's name. Or you go to that dead person's bank account and you say, "Hey, I want to withdraw a certain amount of funds," and they say, "Where's your short certificate?" And you say, "Well, what's a short certificate?" Mhm. What's a short certificate? These are all the things that you really probably should know. Um, um, and you will know if you listen to us, if you plan your estate. And these are things that you teach your heirs or the executor that you want to oversee your estate. Your will is not effective until you die. So many people think, well, if I make my will, should I come register it with you all? No, not in the state of Pennsylvania and nor in our office here in Philadelphia. If you were in Maryland, then the answer would be yes. They require you to file your will in Maryland and probably many other states. But right now we're talking about the state of Pennsylvania, and that's the only, in Philadelphia, that's the only jurisdiction that I have. So remember some of the stuff, that you're hearing. I know you want to share it. Be careful, because when you share it with somebody that doesn't live in the state of Pennsylvania, then you may have to say, basic things about the will, but the technicality of it is based on what state you live in. So please be careful with that. So let's just talk about also when the will is valid. The will is not valid until you die. And so, one second. Just go get a name and don't run. The will is not valid until you die. And a lot of people, that's why they think they should make it when they get older, because by then they have all their assets, they know what they want to do or whatever. But always remember this. You can. Kids don't have a name. Okay, I'll get it, okay? Give me 1 second. Just always remember that you can change your will. Like if you make your will at 25 when you buy your house, you can change it at 50 when you buy 3 houses and have 4 kids. Wills can be changed. So it's not like if I make my will, that's it. No, it's not it. It's it when you die. So you can always update those wills. So a valid will in Pennsylvania has to be signed at the bottom. So don't start writing your will and then sign it and then say, "Oh, P.S. Let me add this other thing I forgot to put on there," because the only thing that's going to be approved and verified is what's above the will. So you say, "Well, can I write my will? Is it okay if I write my will?" And yeah, you can write your will. Do I need to have witnesses and do I need to have it notarized? That's not a requirement in the state of Pennsylvania, but we recommend it. We also recommend that you go to an attorney that specializes in wills and trusts, because sometimes you may have a complicated situation and you want an attorney that actually has some experience in that particular discipline. We have attorneys for everything. And some attorneys that's just not their specialty. So we recommend that you go to an attorney, and we can give you all the information on how you can find attorneys that specialize in that. And if your constituents and you all cannot afford an attorney, there are numerous clinics in the city that we are going to give you that information where you can call those clinics, and they offer free will preparation. And so you make a will when you get assets. I had a call today from a young lady, and I have seen her somewhere along my path of doing these seminars, or maybe I was at a workshop, and she said, "Hey, you know, I don't know, I may have cancer, and I have two little children, and I wanted to make sure that I heard what you said about the will, and I want to make sure that I plan just in case." And I told her, yeah, you need to seek an attorney or whatever. And I got a text message from her today, and I didn't know who it was because I give my phone around, and she said, well, it was true. She had come, and she said, I wanted to listen to you, so can you make my will? And so she had interpreted that I was saying you can come to me, and I will. And I'm like, no, I don't make the will. I'm the registrar of will. I don't make the will, but I will give you information so you can seek you the legal counsel that you need. It was hurtful to me that that's a reality for such a young woman, but it also made me feel good because she thought about it and said, hey, I want to have a say as to who is going to raise my children. So when I was saying about assets, don't think of assets as just physical. Assets is also your children, your disabled children. Some of them always is going to have someone take care of them. And so what's happening here in Philadelphia and basically pretty much around the nation is people are not taking the time out to understand why they need wills, because our education system is not teaching people. And that is what my sole mission is, to teach you why it's important to make a will, to make a proper will, and to make sure you put that will somewhere where someone knows. Because if you hide it and no one knows, that's not going to be an effective will. If you verbally say, hey, I want my granddaughter to have this house, a verbal is no such thing as a verbal will. You have to write that, and you have to sign it, and you have to make sure somebody knows what it is. And when we say go to an attorney that specializes in wills and estate, we also want you to make sure it's a self-proven affidavit. You want to make that will a self-proven affidavit. And a self-proven affidavit is when you make a proper will with an attorney, you have two witnesses, they sign, they witness your signatures. It's notarized. And when they make it self-proven, that means that when your executor comes and bring that will to us, they do not have to find the witnesses because it's already self-proven in the will that you have. We recommend that you leave the will with someone that you trust. If it's your attorney, okay, but you need to tell someone how to contact your attorney. If you decide to keep it with you with your important papers, we recommend that you get a lockbox from Home Depot or Lowe's and make sure it is fireproof and waterproof. And make sure that's where you leave it and you tell someone you trust. Because a lot of times I get constituents coming in and saying, my mom said that she had a will, and I just can't find it. And I believe them. The mother or father or grandmother, they probably did have a will. But you know how you hide things from yourself? And if you don't tell someone where your will is, how are they to know where your will is? And so those are the things you can be creative. You can make a copy and leave it with other people. But all I'm trying to just tell you is best practice is to go to an attorney, sit down with an attorney that specializes in it, or go to one of the clinics. We just put free legal help, the flyers there. Numerous places that you can go. Some are doing it remotely. Do it as soon as possible. If you can't get out the house now, or you can't get through, you can simply write all your assets on one side, write down who they're going to, and sign it, and let somebody know where it is, and that could stand a court of law as well. And so before I go on to the consequences when you do not make wills, I'll ask that my attorney, Sharon Wilson, go over some of the things that she thinks that I may have left out that is important for you all to know.
Okay, Register. The only thing that I might want to add to the conversation is just to make sure that we're clear that the orphans court over which you preside as clerk is part of the first judicial district, but the other departments, the marriage licenses, the marriage record, probate, inheritance tax, they are all administered by virtue of Pennsylvania law. That's
Sorry, I stopped the video, and y'all probably heard me. I told you the little popsicle. Yes, and so we're finding an alarming rate that African Americans are not making wills, and it's causing a lot of tangled titles in our community, and it's causing us to lose a lot of wealth. I just want to read the statistics for you all. I normally have it up, but I just pulled it up. And I think I want to make sure I'm going to send you all the link. So you should really read this, I guess what you call it was a report that was written by a Texas law professor by name Thomas Mitchell. He just recently won the MacArthur Genius Award for his scholarship on Black home ownership last month. He won a lot of money. Mark is going to send you all that link. He said that given all of our work on preserving intergenerational wealth and home ownership and closing the racial gap, he said that some of the most disheartening and sobering statistics really alarmed him. And he said in the United States, there's a massive racial will making or estate planning gap among all these other racial gaps that we are now talking about in our society. 65% of white American families have a will. 23% of African American families have a will. 75% of white Americans with college education have wills. 33% of African Americans with a college education have a will. You have to read his entire report, and you will see that not only are we in state emergency in Philadelphia for losing wealth, but within the next 25 years, it will be the largest transfer of generational wealth in the history of America because the baby boomers are now passing on. Billions of dollars are at stake to be transferred. And the last thing that we want to get caught up in is not preparing our estates and making wills so it is a smooth transfer of your assets to someone. Because some people are dying and everybody has relatives, but sometimes people don't know how to find those relatives. That sometimes that property ends up either getting stolen, or if we can't find who the heirs are, it sits in that treasury up there. And we have billions of dollars sitting in the treasury of unclaimed inheritance. Sometimes when you go to those workshops and you'll see somebody sitting there and they tell you to put your social security number in to see if you were any money is around for you. With some of that money, if they don't find out who the heirs are, then that money just sits in a treasury forever if they never find it. So your will is just as important as your homeowner's insurance. Your will is just as important, if not more, than your life insurance. Your will is just as important as your car owner's insurance. Your will is your insurance to protect your generational wealth, and it gives you the sole authority to decide where your assets go and to whom it goes to. And we have to get that information out immediately, because what's happening is we are leaving homes in our names when we're dead, and it's causing our families not to be able to preserve your generational wealth, because they can't sell it, they can't pass it down to their heirs, they can't qualify for homeowners insurance. So that means you're sitting in a row house that anything can happen, accident, a fire. I had a fire a couple years ago next to me, even though I didn't get the fire down, the smoke, but I was able to, call my claims agent and then file a claim so I could be restored. If you live in a house and somebody died without a will and left those houses and properties in their name, now it's tangled up. And so even though you think it's heir property and you have legal rights, and you probably do, you can't do legal things with it. You can't qualify for basic system repairs. And this is not just for poor people who just looking for a handout. With the pandemic, a lot of people are going to be eligible for some of the programs that they might have never thought they was going to be eligible for. You don't know what your tomorrow is. But right now, the government has programs to assist people that are low income and preserving their homes. Free wiring, electrical wiring, free plumbing, free gas heaters, free chimney sweepers, free roofs. But guess what? You don't qualify for that because you can't prove ownership, because it's still in the dead person's name. So really, you're more or less a squatter, and I know it's mine. I've been living here. My grandmother lived here, my mother lived here, and she left it to me, and verbally. But you find out when you go to sell it, or maybe even when you get sick and you say, hey, I want to leave it to my child, you might not realize that you can't. And what is more problematic is you do not qualify for FEMA. And you all know FEMA is a government subsidy that protects us from catastrophic loss. It's a difference. Insurance and FEMA is different. Insurance, you actually have to pay that policy, and then you put your claim in and they approve it if it's covered. FEMA is if it's a disaster like a hurricane or earthquake, the uprisings that just happened, FEMA is government support. And the reason why I found out FEMA, because I never would mention that, is because my daughter went to Puerto Rico recently, and she went to help them rebuild, not from the last hurricane, the one before that. So they don't have two since then. And she went to help them rebuild because, of course, with hurricanes, your roof fly off. And she found and learned that so many of those people in Puerto Rico could not afford for FEMA, because when they went to fill out the application, one of the requirements is show proof of ownership. And so the way you show proof of ownership is with that deed. What does that deed say? And so they said, well, that's my mother, that's my father. I mean, I own it. I mean, that was my family, but their deed still says their grandma, their grandfather. So then you are rejected because you don't qualify for it. And that's what a tangled title is. And that's what's happening here in Philadelphia. We have a record of close to 14,000, and that's just loosely based tangled titles here in the city of Philadelphia. And when I campaigned, at one out of every 30 people that I talked to, one did not know what the Register of Wills office. And the one that didn't know only knew because somebody had died. And when they went to do some business with the house or go, withdraw the money from the bank for the funeral, some people start throwing words at them like, you got to probate, you got to go get a short certificate. This is not your home, you can't sell it. This is just in your mother's name. And so that's why you see so many empty lots and abandoned houses. Why would a house be abandoned at the magnitude that they've been abandoned in our neighborhoods? Because somebody did not do proper estate planning. Somebody did not take the time to, and by the way, you can't, if the house is still on a mortgage, you can't go and make agreement with your mortgage company because they can't legally talk to you because you are not the legal person on the deed. And so a lot of people are sitting in houses and don't realize that they're in tangled titles when they try to be qualified for these programs, or they just never do it. And now it's 2 and 3 and 4 generations down. So whether or not you want to pay estate taxes or you want to probate or you want to deal with this a situation that you're sitting in or that you may die and leave your children in, you need to understand these terms. And one of the terms is when somebody died with property, that you need to come to the Register of Wills office and you need to probate that property. That's the word, probate. And attorney Sharon Wilson will go over with you what probate means. And also, a lot of times people don't come to probate because one, they don't know what it is, but also because they think they may have to pay exorbitant amount of inheritance taxes. And that's not necessarily true, but she's going to explain to you the probate process when you have a will, and then the probate process when you don't have a will. And then the fact is, whether you want to pay inheritance taxes or not, you are going to, the estate is always going to be responsible for inheritance tax. It just accrues. And so Sharon is going to speak to you all briefly on some of those terminology, so you'll understand. Make the will, and then this what happens when you die with or without a will.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that, Register. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Wilson, and I am the solicitor at the Register of Wills office. And I'm happy to be here to educate you about these important issues. Now, in terms of probate, that's the process by which you actually open an estate. It sounds like a big fancy word, but what it means is you going over to visit the Register of Wills. These days, during the pandemic, we have to make an appointment. So you make an appointment, you go over, and in order to open up the estate, you talk with a clerk that works there, and you provide the clerk the documentation that you need, which is a death certificate to prove that in fact was a death, and some identification for yourself to prove that you are related to the decedent and how you are related to the decedent. Now, you also have to provide some information, such as if there are any other heirs. So if you died and your father died, for example, and you have brothers and sisters, then you need to list those. If your mother died and she had children other than you, then you have to list those people. So once you go through that process, at the end of that process, then someone is appointed. If you have a will and you go through that process, the person that's appointed is called an executor. And the register will tell you that if you have a will and you go through that process, it can be fairly simple. You present the will, the clerk will review it to make sure that it's valid, that it has everything that Pennsylvania law insists that it have in order to be valid. She will take that same information from you. They'll do a calculation based on the value in the estate, and then you will be appointed the executor of the estate. That's what we call somebody who actually has the responsibility for distributing the assets as they are listed under the will. Now, you can go through that whole process with a will, and you can have your appointment in the clerk's office, and probably in under an hour, you'll be out of the clerk's office. You may get your letters maybe a week or so later, but the part that you have to go through will take you about an hour there. Now, if you have no will, which we call administration, then you go in essentially the same thing. You go in with your death certificate and with your ID, and you list some information. But in order for you to be the administrator, you have to get the consent of everyone who is in the same position in terms of biology that you are. So if you have a brother or a sister or sisters, when you go, you need the consent of each of your brothers and each of your sisters. If you are a sister yourself probating the estate of another sister, then you have to get the permission of all the other people who could also probate the will. And that's because when you don't have a will, everybody who is the next of kin, as is defined by the state of Pennsylvania, not by the people that you love the most, the people that Pennsylvania says are biologically close to that dead person, everybody has an equal opportunity to administer the estate. So if you want to be the one, then you got to get permission from everybody else. And as we know, sometimes death does change people a little bit, and obtaining permission from other relatives is not always the easiest thing to do. So if you can't obtain permission from all of the other relatives, it doesn't matter if you have permission of most of the other relatives, all of the other relatives, and this is when everybody wishes that they were an only child, um, then you have to file a petition with the register, and you have to explain to the register, to Tracey Gordon, why you deserve to be administrator, while your other siblings may object. And after you have that hearing, of which I'm sure she'll describe for you, what sort of difficulties and challenges can come out of those hearings, then a decision is made as to who the administrator is. And that's a process that could take a few weeks or more. During the time of COVID, when we're getting even more applications and renunciations in, you might even be a few more weeks beyond that. So the difference between a will and administration is the difference between going in an hour and seeing a clerk, and going in and hoping to get appointed 30 days later after you have a hearing with some other folks. Okay? Now, the other thing to remember that the register wanted me to point out to you is about inheritance tax. She's of a belief, and so am I, that some people do not probate wills or probate estates because they believe that there's going to be this humongous inheritance tax owed at the time of death. Inheritance tax is a tax that is applied by the state of Pennsylvania, and it's applied on a transfer of property when property goes from one person to another by virtue of death. So if I'm living and you're living and I give you something, there's no inheritance tax. But if one of us is dead and we give the other something via a will or via administration because we didn't leave a will, then there is an inheritance tax applied. And the inheritance tax is based on the value of the property that is given. And the thing to remember about the inheritance tax is the value that is examined is the value at the date of death. So if you let your mother's estate go and you didn't probate it, and then your grandmother's estate go and you didn't probate it, and now you find you have to probate something that's, 10 or 20 or more years old, it's not the value of that real property for now. It's the value that that property had 10 or 20 years ago on the date of death. So you take that date of death value, and the amount of tax that you owe is based on your relationship to the decedent. And the closer you are biologically to the decedent, to the dead person, the closer you are biologically to the dead person, the fewer or the lesser the tax. So if If it was your spouse that died, so if that was your husband or your wife, the tax is actually zero. It wasn't always zero, but it is zero now, and that's a good thing. But if the person that died, for example, was just a friend of yours, and you decided in your will to give them some money, they pay the highest amount of tax. So the first thing to establish when you're thinking about, oh, this inheritance tax, what's my relationship? Because everybody in between pays a little bit smaller amounts of tax. So that you can go from zero as high as 15%. And the thing about the tax is the tax itself is not that burdensome a tax. It's not that large. But if you wait 10 or 15 years, it does accrue interest. So when you go to pay the tax, if you wait a long time, it's not the tax that'll kill you, it's the interest. But the good thing about the inheritance tax is one, they're not so aggressive at the time of death. They'll get around to you, but in the meantime, the interest will accumulate. But what they are, when you go in to pay the tax, they will work out a payment plan with you. So never let the amount of inheritance tax scare you from getting property that you can put in your own name and take advantage of all of those programs that the register told you about, of those, system repair programs, of the FEMA programs, of any grants that are for homeowners. You can get those. Go pay your inheritance tax, make out a payment plan. We've seen payment plans where people pay as few as $25 a month. So you go and you see what you can work out and you get started. So probate, whether it's with or without a will, and then make sure that at the end of the probate process, you pay your inheritance tax or make an agreement to pay it.
And it's really as simple as that. And that's why it's important to make a will. Because when you don't, and believe me, you may think, oh, my son and daughter, they're not going to fight. They're not going to argue. Or they know that I'm leaving it to my granddaughter. I raised her. They all have their own houses. This is granddaughter Jamila's houses. I want her to have it. She's been here all her life. She's taking care of me. That verbal will does not count. And I'm telling you all, I have witnessed many citations, not a lot, because this is my first year, but the ones that I've witnessed, particularly one even today, you talking about the fighting, you talking about the special situations and circumstances where the person that they're living with for 25 years find out that they weren't divorced, male or female, and then that wife or husband comes up and petitions, to be an heir. And because you didn't leave a will, you have to follow the state. And even before I became registered will, I've seen some funny things happen when simply you can make a will. People are coming up to me and telling me that their fathers or their mothers, they're not listening. They already promised them the homes and they are refusing to make wills. So they're trying to get them to listen to these seminars. And what I'm telling you all is what I want to fight to do is I want to make sure that I go to these legislators and somehow it has to be put in a course in high school, financial literacy, like what is a credit card? What is interest rate? What is a will? Why do you need a will? Because some of these young people actually inherit houses and they don't know, um, they don't understand the dynamics. I have someone that was born in front of me and they they couldn't they didn't understand that even though they said I didn't ask for nothing, I didn't want anything, they didn't really understand the dynamics is whether you wanted it or not, because they didn't leave a will, the state of Pennsylvania determined that, you are eligible for one half of this estate, whether you want it or not. But people just don't understand that. And so I had a chance to talk to a lot of lawyers that work and assist constituents here in Philadelphia with untangling their titles. And as Sharon told you, that sometimes these could be, it could be your great grandmother, right? And you're living there as a great granddaughter, right? So that great grandmother had 5 kids, right? And then those 5 kids each had 2, 3, 4, 5. Like those are all the estates that, because the grandmother didn't leave a will, any of them that's alive or any of their kids alive still have legal interest vested in that based on um, um, the statute. And so in order for you to be able to even begin understanding how to untangle titles, because it may just not be your mother and it's just you and your brother. It could be your mother and 10 of you all. Or it could be your father who lived with somebody for years but never divorced your mother, and he had other kids. It really gets complicated. And so the program that I'm starting, and I have started, is called Probate Deferment Initiative, because we're finding, based on what these attorneys that are assisting people, they're saying that the average person that's coming to untangle a title falls in a certain income category, and they do not have the money to pay the fees. And so I decided to defer the fees. I can't waive them because it's legislated. I can't say you can't pay it, but I can defer that fee. And defer means if you decide to live in there and your family lives in there forever, but if you decide to sell the property, then we're coming for our fees. And so I work really closely with Philadelphia VIP and other organizations, and they convinced me that that's the best way to go. And they accepted the probate deferment. And our attorney, Terry Booker, has been very instrumental in putting this program together. And I'd like for her to take some time out to explain to you all what the program is. And we will definitely make sure you all get all the information, because it is one of my first executive of orders as registrar of will. And I am just, you wouldn't believe how happy I am that just simply saying, okay, we can't waive them, but we can defer them. And then we got the record of deeds to do something even. Terry negotiated something that's so wonderful. I'll let her tell you all about it.
Thank you, Madam Register. So the probate deferment initiative, it was designed to help those who can't afford to pay the probate fees that we already talked about what probate is. Those fees up front, with or without a will, um, so to defer those fees. So we defer the cost of probate, and individuals who are going to retain the property, as Madam Register stated, we're not going to ask for those fees back. However, if you open up the estate and you may have other assets or things that you get access to once the estate is open, we will be looking for those fees. And if you decide to sell, we will be looking for those fees. And to ensure that we do receive the probate fees, we will place a lien on the property. So there will be a lien on the property in order, if you decide to sell years later, we still get the fees years later. Um, so the most important part of untangling titles and untangling the deed would be to create a new deed and record it. Commissioner of Records, James Leonard, he was gracious to work with the Register of Wills office. And he said, Madam Register asked, hey, can we waive the recording fees? And he said yes. Without any problem, he just said yes. So he is waiving the recording fee so you can get that deed and get it untangled. However, that does not include the transfer taxes. So if you have transfer taxes, you may or may not have transfer taxes. So that shouldn't hold you back from recording that deed to untangle the title. And another thing, we are requiring anyone who wants to participate in this program right now for you to go to one of the agencies to get assistance so they can help you fill out the application and, you know, walk you through the process. Along with that, the organizations have been so gracious to say, we're going to avoid tangling up these titles in the future, and we're going to create a will for you. So they're going to help you create a will so you can avoid this in the future. So we don't have to have your family members coming in getting a probate deferment because you didn't plan as the register suggested. So that is the probate deferment initiative in a nutshell.
And so this is, I'm just so happy that I have the authority to help people protect their generational wealth and stay in their homes. We have a very high growing rate of homelessness. And as I told you before, that there's another study that I'm studying that's saying that our future generations are not going to be able to buy a home. And the only way they're going to reach that American dream of owning a home is they're going to have to inherit it. And that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. But by making a will, you're going to make it easier for your families to inherit it. So we want to avoid the problem, and that's what I'm doing by educating you all about the importance of making wills. And then we're going to help you solve some of the problems, because some of you all are sitting in these tangled titles. And then we all are going to make sure that once you come out of the tangled title, the requirement is also to make a will and be educated on the importance of it so we can break this curse, because that's what I consider it. It is a curse of a very high magnitude.
This has been riveting, but I just want to be, my colleague mentioned to me that it's already 7:05. I've been hanging on every word y'all been saying. I got 2 pages of notes. Wow, I thought I was in the know, but daggone, y'all dropped the bomb on no.
Well, you know what, I'll tell you, we'll come back, but let me this is something important that you all should know, okay? So, for the first time in the Register of Wills history, we have a very live website that is updated almost on a daily basis, and it's also translated in Spanish. So for all those Hispanic CDCs, our website goes in both languages. The second thing is we are now on almost every social media site. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So you'll see this broadcast in the future, so y'all can send it out to the people who didn't make it. But also go look at other previous broadcasts, because we say different things every time. If you go on our Facebook page, PHLROW, and scroll down on the videos, you'll see us saying basically most of the same thing, but you'll also see us saying different things, because every time we talk, more and more information comes out.
So
we also
questions.
have a very active online where you can email us.
Yeah.
That email address is rowonline@phila.gov. We respond within 24 hours. Also, we have a phone. You can leave our phones. Our offices is roughly 9 to 3. We're open, and we will continue to stay open on appointment basis only. But if you call 215-686-6250 during the day, you'll get a phone, but our phone's been ringing off the hook. But mainly, all this information is on our website and is on our social media. And tonight, I see we have like over 50-something people on there. Go on my Facebook page and hit the like button and share it so other people can see it. You go on there daily and you will see all these interviews. I
So
didn't know.
really quickly, I just want to reference the fact that y'all had we had identified several questions that some of the
Yes,
registrants
yes. So
wanted
Sharon can
to
do
see
that.
if we could try to answer. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
not everyone who registered that had a question will be able to get to. We're just selecting a very tiny sampling of that.
Good.
I didn't know whether or not your team wanted to try to answer any
No,
of
no, no. Let's Sharon to do it. Sharon to answer the question. Sharon, you got the questions, right?
Yes, I do,
Okay, good.
Register.
Yep.
Okay, so the question I have is, what happens if my parents do not write a will before they pass away? Alex, I had that question and I answered it in the chat box, but I'm answering it again because I think more people might want to know. You will have to pay a tax. If you are a child, children pay tax at 4.5%. So at the time that that will is probated, the assets will be taxed at 4.5% as long as everything goes to you, or 4.5% total, and then divided between you and your siblings.
Okay.
How do I prepare a will, and how much does one cost? Wills are prepared by attorneys, and you know that attorneys have varying fees. But I think that you should expect to spend between $400 and maybe a little bit more than that for a will. And you should feel free to ask the attorney if they're willing to enter into some type of payment arrangement. Um, in private practice, I did, and I think other attorneys will as well. Are there any programs in place that would offset court filing fees associated with resolving tangled titles? None that I know, other than the VIP program does offer some funds for tangled titles. VIP is volunteers for indigent persons, I think, and those are attorney volunteers, and they have a tangled title fund there, and they do offer some fees for helping people to untangle titles. I have a question about the DA's deed filer. What I know in the Stolen Deeds Committee, at one time, the DA of Philadelphia, the district attorney, and the district attorney before him, and the district attorney before that one, would not prosecute a stolen property if in fact it was only one property. And the way people steal properties is by writing and filing fake deeds. They pretend to be somebody else and they transfer your property, for example, to somebody else's name. And if you discovered it, the DA would not would not file charges against the person if they knew the person, as a matter of policy. The last meeting we had with the DA, they're changing that policy so that if you have information that a property has been fraudulently conveyed, which is what we call a stolen property via deed, then you should contact the DA's office. In addition to that, the Commissioner of Records, where deeds are filed, has said that he will now implement a new policy where you are able to register for his program, and he will send you an email in the event that there's activity transferring your deed. So that's something that you can do. And as I understand, that doesn't cost you anything, but you will get a notice when somebody tries to transfer your deed. Okay. How can you partner with philanthropy to increase the percentage of Black families with wills? Wow, Omar, that is a very good question and way beyond this program. But you might want to talk with some of the nonprofits that at least right now are working toward this problem. And you have to bring it to their attention so it can become a part of what they are, that's sort of what's on their radar. And the other question I had that I got out of the chat is about a short certificate. Short certificates are certificates that allow you to retrieve funds, for example, from the bank when somebody dies. The bank wants a certificate that says you are the authorized person that's able to retrieve the funds. Doesn't mean that it belongs to you as administrator or executor, but you do have the authority to retrieve those funds. When you probate an estate, when you open an estate, at that time, you tell us how many short certificates you need, and we will add that amount to the fee so that you get them at the same time you get your letters giving you the authority to administer the estate. And you can take that short certificate to the bank and you can retrieve the fees. The last question, somebody asked me, how do you transfer a deed? Essentially, you have to get a new deed drafted. So that if you want your deed to go to somebody else, or you want to add somebody else onto the deed, you have another deed drafted with that new person's name on it or that additional person's name on the deed. Once that deed is drafted, then you file it as you would any other deed. So those are my questions and those are my speed answers.
Fantastic. You was doing it.
I was trying. We know we don't want to keep you too much later, but the information is good, and so we
Very
want to
valuable.
give it if we can.
Very valuable. I have to say, on behalf of everyone, all the participants, all of our members, all of our staff, our executive director Rick Sauer, we are just grateful for this. This is an incredible bit of information, very powerful, and it is, dollars and cents, incredibly valuable. And I hope that you all listening to the sound of our voices, you were taking copious notes, you were copying and pasting the links that are in the chat box. This information will be available on our website and also on the Register of Wills website. Please go back to it often to gather the really important information that you need to do the work that you need to do to maintain your family's wealth, and also to be able to communicate and articulate to your constituency, your communities, how they can maintain their wealth. This is real wealth, folks. There's a reason why Philadelphia is one of the poorest major cities in the nation. And a lot of that is behind the fact that we're not accessing the resources, we're not protecting our resources the way they need to be protected. This office is clearly putting in the work to try to change that. And we applaud them and want to continue to work with them any way that we can to support that. Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, but you can see you got some strong sisters making some things happen here in Philly. So thank you, Madam Register. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Terry. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, Zakia Hall, who manages, she is our Madam of Zoom, who organizes all of our stuff.
You did a good job.
Doing a fantastic job. And thank you all too, please. Thank you for your continued support and participation in PACDC programs. Thank you for your continued support and belief in Philadelphia's neighborhoods. Thank you for your continued support of your families and your communities. This world is going through some tragic stuff right now, right? The most devastating period in all of our lives in over 100 years. Ooh. And we need every bit of goodwill, every bit of good heart, good kindness, and strong thinking, so that we can maintain and survive and get to the next year. And so please count PACDC as your partner in trying to accomplish that. Thank you, Madam Register, again. This is
Thank you for having us.
Major booty to y'all. Major booty.
I love it. I see the responses, and thank you all. Like I said, check our social media sites, because it's other questions. Sharon answers questions every time we have these, and we have them 2 and 3 times a week. So just go click on them. Let your grandparents and them and people in your family listen to these. And have a happy Thanksgiving. And I look forward to working with you all again, Pam. And thank you all for the listening audience in the chat room, and have a nice evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Stay
Good night,
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.